There are very few instances where you tell yourself a good guy with a boomstick stops a bad guy with a boomstick. I very much so believe that. But in this case, the shooting that happened, I think it was just yesterday, Fort Stewart. It was six unarmed soldiers, good guys, without a weapon, stopping a bad guy with a gun. Reportedly, a sergeant accused of shooting five people on the base. And we got six unarmed soldiers praised for tackling and subduing Fort Stewart shooter. They were unarmed and ran at and tackled an armed person who they knew was actively shooting their buddies, said the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, just today.
Army Secretary Dan Driscoll also recognizing six soldiers you saw there standing behind him, saying they jumped in to stop the gunman and that their actions absolutely saved lives. One was unarmed yet tackled the suspect. Another jumped on top of the gunman until law enforcement arrived. Some questions still remain.
And that's the thing, it's just like this guy, absolutely just on the base himself, doing this stuff. Incredible of the fact that, as I mentioned this on my main channel, the fact that in so many facilities, depending on the force protection level, I think depending on the base commander, is whether you're allowed to use your license to carry on that base. When I was active duty in the Marine Corps, I was primarily stationed at Camp Lejeune. You could not concealed carry on that base. If you had a North Carolina concealed carry, which I did, you could not concealed carry on the base. So all the thousands of Marines there, soldiers there as well, sprinkle of a lot of sailors, sprinkle of soldiers, and then all the civilians. You could not CCW, LTC, license to carry on the base. And I think that that is an issue. I think that that is a good thing that these six unarmed soldiers were able to take decisive action. I think, Sergeant Aaron Turner and his fellow soldiers quickly brought Sergeant Cornelius Samarinto Radford, the suspected shooter, under control and helped get victims to the hospital in time to save lives, officials said. One of the soldiers tackled the person, said the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll. So just think about this. They were unarmed and ran at and tackled an armed person who they knew were actively shooting their colleagues and their and fellow soldiers. Another soldier jumped on top of the person to subdue them until law enforcement arrived. They have quick actions there on the base themselves. First SWAT team there within 20 minutes. We have Fish and Game on site. We got MPs there, military police there. But he's taken down by unarmed soldiers. I think that ultimately we really need to rethink the way that we're allowed to protect ourselves on base, because the amount of stuff going on military bases has significantly increased over, I would say, the last decade. And it is something that we definitely need to consider of, like, what does this mean for being able to protect our troops and being able for them to protect themselves whenever they're on a base overall. I think it's a good thing, that the fact that this happened, that they were able to subdue him, but we still have a gap when it comes to protecting soldiers overall, Marines, all that type of stuff, because I don't think that this is something that's just going to quickly stop, especially when we have such a good Second Amendment. We have the ability to protect ourselves. These military-based shootings are something that this is not an isolated incident. Military-based shootings have ranged from isolated incidents to workplace violence and terrorism, whereas I think that they significantly keep going and keep growing. The shooting of 5 U.S. Army soldiers in the Army base of Fort Stewart, Georgia on Wednesday, just yesterday, is the latest of a growing list of violent incidents at American military installations over the years. Shootings have ranged from isolated incidents between service members to attacks on bases. Between service members, like, some people are literally still in gangs, even though they joined the military. Attacks on military bases. We had somebody here from Saudi Arabia who was training. He took out some folks on a base in Florida. We had the 2009 shooting of that officer who shot 13 people, or he shot more than 13. He killed 13 people. And so we just have this influx of people not being able to protect themselves. And I think that is a horrible thing, that we are just kind of leaving people out there to dry. But I mean, what do you think about this? Do you think that we should really rethink The ability to carry on federal properties, buildings, should we leave it up to base commanders? Should we leave it up to regional commanders? Or should we leave it up to whatever the rules are in the state? Because every single piece of federal property that's in the continental is in a state except for Washington, D.C. Now if we're talking about stuff in Guam, that all belongs to the federal government, or the Northern Mariana Islands, or the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay, that should be all federal type stuff, Puerto Rico, et cetera, et cetera. But the states themselves, state rights, I think that that's a little bit different. First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you here, telling you my afterthoughts, my main channels where I talk about EDC gear. I talk about like big things that could influence your prep and all that type of stuff. This channel, I want to kind of give my thoughts about events that are co-related to military, co-related to just whatever the hell I feel like talking about. So if you like that type of stuff, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you here. Everybody else, catch y'all later.